everybody, it's Paige Evans and I want to share how I created these stitched thank you cards using some really cool features of the Silhouette Cameo. So let's get started. In Silhouette, I am going to provide you with this thanks cards with stitching holes cut file. It actually looks a little bit different than what I'm opening up here because I decided to include the inner pieces as well for backing. But just for now, I'm going to cut these from white cardstock and I'm changing the blade to a ratchet blade. That's what I prefer. The speed is 4, and then I'm going to send, and it takes about 8.5 minutes for the machine to cut the card out and create the stitching holes. So I'm going to peel it carefully off my mat and then get to stitching. Now just be very careful as you're peeling these off because they're quite delicate, especially if your mat is brand new. So just take your time peeling it off and then get to stitching. So I'm using DMC white embroidery floss, all 6 strands, so that it creates the ultimate texture, and I'm doing a basic back stitch. I actually created one with a chain link stitch, but I think the stitching was too predominant and I wanted it to be more on the inside of the letter. So I decided to go with a back stitch. When I was finished, I tied a knot and trimmed off the excess thread and then folded the card in half. I didn't create a score line or perforated line. It just folds in half nice and even. And then since I'm stitching, I might as well stitch the other piece too. So again, I'm going to do a simple back stitch using the same white DMC embroidery floss, again, all 6 strands. And this just takes practice to not bend the cut file. It does get a little bendy, but that's okay. It all flattens out in the end once you adhere the backing pieces onto the back. So just take your time, plop yourself in front of your favorite Netflix show and get to stitching. I think it took about an hour to hand stitch this entire thanks cut file. Again, tying a knot in the back, trimming off the excess, and my 2 stitched cards are ready to go. Gonna keep going. Okay friends, I'm going to show you how to use the PixScan mat. In a new Silhouette Studio document, click on the Pix icon and then we need to calibrate it with your phone. So click on Show Calibration Test Card and then print it. There's a printer icon in Studio so you can print it directly from there. Here's what it looks like when it prints out. Then take a picture with your phone. You need to try and make it as straight as possible with the edges aligned so it's not skewed, and then email yourself the photo, get it onto your computer however you do that, whether it's connecting your phone to your computer or just emailing it to yourself. And then click on that plus icon, find the picture that you just took and got onto your computer and open it. And this is how Silhouette figures out which device you're using with the PixScan mat. So it's calibrating everything. Now you can see the Google Pixel 2 is already there because I already have mine calibrated, so I deleted one. But hopefully, crossing fingers, your device should show up. And now, on your PixScan mat, you need to cut your paper to fit inside that rectangle. And again, take a picture with it. You want to make sure the entire mat is included in the photo. And then again, email yourself that photo or plug in your phone to your computer. You need to get your picture onto the computer and then import PixScan image from File, find your photo, and then it's going to load the image. This might take a while, up to a few minutes, and then it magically appears. So now you might be used to this step. We're going to trace the image. So open the tracing tool, select the trace area. So I'm going over all of these flowers, and then you need to play with these buttons. Play with the threshold, the filters, high pass, low pass. I'm trying to get good coverage over the flowers. If you want to have a white space all around, you increase the threshold, and then I'm going to increase the low pass, and that just fills in the flowers a little bit more. Click on Trace, and that outlines all of the flowers. That creates the cut lines so your Cameo knows exactly where to cut. I right-clicked and released the compound path, And then I changed the die lines to black so I could see it a little bit better. I thought the red lines, I just couldn't see them. So you'll notice inside some of the flowers are some little pieces that didn't get outlined. And so I'm basically cleaning up the file. Any spot where there's a little circle that I don't want cut, it's not a huge deal. You probably wouldn't notice if those tiny holes got cut, but I'm just going to clean it up. So right click delete or just use the delete button on your keyboard. And just zooming out to make sure I got everything. There's some pieces in the corners on the edges that I don't really need to be cut out, so I'll just go ahead and delete those. And then it's ready to send. I'm switching again to the ratchet blade, that's just what I use, and then I see that there is a little tiny circle that I missed, so I'm just going to go back in really quick and delete that. Again, it's probably not a huge deal, I probably wouldn't have even noticed, but it's the perfectionist in me, I guess. All right, click on send. Again, everything is ready to go. And then your Cameo is going to read those registration marks. That's why it's so important when you're taking the picture of your phone to make sure the entire mat is included so that the Cameo can read those lines. And then here it goes. It's reading the registration marks and it's going to calibrate with what is shown in Silhouette Studio. So it's cutting it out, and then it took about 15 minutes, and here it is. So awesome. I even love the outline that it left. I think that will make a great stencil. So this, basically, the long and short of it, is to save me time from fussy cutting out all of those flowers. I think I would have cut out a whole bunch more than what I actually ended up using. I think I only used about a couple dozen flowers, and I probably would have cut out the whole sheet. And I will have lots of leftovers for extra projects, but this is just such a time saver, and I love how it cuts them out almost perfectly. So back to the card, I'm doing the peekaboo technique, so I adhered a piece of white cardstock to the back of the title, or to the back of the front using foam squares for lots of dimension, and I am peeling these flowers that are perfectly cut out for me off the mat and then tucking them underneath the letters, mostly on the left side. I just call this the peekaboo technique. And then once I liked the placement of the flowers, I adhered them in place, also with little pieces of foam squares for dimension and shadows. So here is the first finished card. Ta-da! The Silhouette Cameo and the PixScan feature made it come together super quickly. So I decided to include the inner pieces for you to make backing the second card a lot easier, and in a new document I just copied and pasted those inner pieces. I turned on the grid so that I can see the squares that are mirrored on the sticky mat, and I am placing each letter inside a 2x2 grid, which is a 2-inch square. So I'll need to cut 6 2-inch squares, and I've picked the pattern papers that I want to use. I'm using pinks and blues to match the first card, since there's pinks and blues in those flowers. There are 6 letters in thanks, so I picked 6 pattern papers, and I'm trimming a 2-inch square from all 6 of those pattern papers that I chose. From this rainbow sunburst paper, I just want these dark pink colors, so I'm just trimming a 2-inch square from that one. And here is the last piece. It's a light blue. So grabbing a super sticky mat, the stickier the better, so they don't shift around because they're such small pieces. I'm putting the 2-inch squares onto the 2x2 grid. Back in Studio, gonna go ahead and click send. Again, changing the auto blade to a ratchet blade. That's just what I use. If you use an auto blade, keep it like that. And then I'm going to send it. Only takes a couple seconds for the machine to cut out these letters, and they are ready to be backed. So you could fussy cut these by hand, but I just like doing it with my machine. It's much faster. So I originally was going to use this floral paper for the background for my card base, but then when I turned it inside out, I noticed the rainbow sunburst, and it's my absolute favorite paper from this collection. I've seen so many people use it, and I decided to go with that in the end. But right now I'm adhering the letters onto the title using liquid glue. Here's my 2 cards. But then, yeah, I decided to flip it around and use the rainbow sunburst paper for the back, or for the card base. I'm using some double-sided tape to attach the stitched title sentiment on the front. And that, my friends, finishes up these cards. So, I hope you are inspired to try the PixScan feature of the Cameo. It's an amazing tool. Fussy cut out all those flowers for me in a matter of minutes. Would have taken me probably hours. And I love the texture of the stitching. And I can't wait to give these to somebody I love. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in my next video.